Our next segment is going to be a very, very good one. Dr. Aart de Geus is a pioneer in Silicon Valley and a former two-time chair of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group Board. Besides SVLG, he serves on the boards of Applied Materials, the Global Semiconductor Alliance, and the Electronic Design Automation Consortium. As for why, simply put, his innovative work in design software has been critical and a catalyst for Moore's Law. So it's fitting that he have a conversation with Lisa Su, a colleague in the semiconductor industry and someone who's building chips that do more with every generation. He'll talk to her about leadership, her path there, and I think some interesting things that may have come up with AMD over the past few days. Welcome, Dr. Aart de Geus and Dr. Lisa Su.
Well, first, mega congratulations. I don't want to say that I saw you get there easily because there was a lot of hard work, but it is super deserved, and I am super happy that you are the person getting this award. Very well, well done. Now, we've heard already from Anna Eshu a bit about your background, and if I were to summarize, you've been fortunate to have very supportive and skilled parents, a great schooling, exposure to all the technologies that we would consider hard, which is the fun stuff. And then, of course, working in multiple companies. And so with this background, I'm sort of wondering, at which point in your life did you start to get an inkling that you actually could perhaps manage, maybe even lead? Are there moments where it starts to show up?
Well, hey, thank you, Art, and it's great to be here with you today. You know, I will say for sure, as growing up, I was classified as the nerd of the group. So, you know, many of us can be classified that way. But, you know, I think, you know, leadership is something you kind of stumble into. And when I was a young engineer at IBM, I was probably only in the business 2 years. They keep asking you, you know, what do you want to do when you grow up? And they gave me the choice, you know, do you think you want to be an IBM vice president, or do you think you want to be an IBM fellow? And I said, well, I'm nowhere near smart enough to be an IBM fellow. So I guess I have to try to manage people. So yes, no, it was very one of those things that, you know, was just an opportunity to, you know, continue to work with people and continue to move the ball forward. And that's how I got into management and leadership.
You know, let me confirm that you're techno nerd. Let me disagree that you could not have been a fellow. And let me reassure you that on the leadership path, you have actually moved forward fantastically well. And I'm sort of wondering, you know, if you started at that point in time to see, are there any differentiating characteristics that are truly just Lisa? And maybe they're very, very common, but maybe there's some things that, you know, the spark that you had.
You know, what I really found, Art, as I was sort of a younger engineer, is that I really enjoyed actually seeing people come together and solve things that they didn't think could be solved. You know, that feeling when, you know, you're sitting there and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're like, how am I going to solve this problem? And you realize that when you put, you know, 10 smart people in a room, they will come up with solutions that you never could have done by yourself. And then you can see teams really do the amazing or the impossible. And that's what really, you know, kept me interested in management and successfully, you know, leading larger teams over time, because the problems got even more and more interesting as you you know, expand that effort.
You know, I love the way you say that, because as we all know, you know, technology has moved to be systemically so complex that now you need many different disciplines, backgrounds to fix anything. And so the word team is so much bigger than the word individual. And maybe even unconsciously, you were already doing exactly that. Now, you said somewhere something that, and I'm sure you've taken many management courses, but that leadership can be taught. I wonder, A, what you mean with that, and B, you know, what's the one leadership trait that you see missing most often? What is it that you tend to focus on when you teach leadership?
I really do believe leadership can be taught because, we are all human beings that, really learn from our environment. And I think the most important thing that I've learned as I have, continued to lead different teams is, different people actually need different leadership styles to unlock their highest potential. What I like to believe is that, a leader's job is to unlock 120% of someone's potential or 120% of a team's potential, because you're really trying to bring out the best in people, and you realize that people need different styles of leadership, to do that. So I would say when I was first a young manager, I was like, boy, I didn't realize that there was all of this this stuff that needed to be done, but that really is how you bring out the best in people.
So if you look back, is there one person that at some point in time brought the best out of you, and meaning specifically brought things out of you either you didn't know you had or you didn't know you needed?
I would say if I look back on my career, the most impactful mentors I've had have told me when I've screwed up. And I think you might agree, Art, because you actually learn the most when you have situations that you've gone through and somebody cares enough to tell you, you could have done that better. And you sit back and say, they're right. I could have done that better. And the next time you do, in fact, learn from that. So I'm very big on the learning moments that sometimes in the moment are a little bit painful, but as you go through it, they make you a better leader, a better person, a better colleague.
Yeah, actually, I greatly agree that the greatest gift is actually honesty. And if the honesty is meant well, it is giving to somebody because you actually believe in them. Giving somebody negative feedback knowing they'll never make it is actually miserable. But giving negative feedback knowing that they could make it is actually investing in you, right? And so
we call it constructive, Art. Constructive.
Yeah. No, I know it has been packaged, but at the end of the day, the word in between there is trust, right? Trust in the giver and trust in the receiver. And when it's constructive, it can be, quote, painful more than receivable. So when you stepped into the job, you said you were excited, the job meaning the AMD CEO job, excited because now you could do something meaningful, something big. And then you defined quickly for AMD sort of 3 tasks: great products, strong customer relationships, and make things simple and fast. And I'm curious now, 6 years later, which one was the hardest, and are there any surprises in that for you?
So it's been sort of my honor of a lifetime to be CEO of AMD. I think when you're a kid growing up in New York, you think about what can you do in life, and this has been an incredible journey for us. I think what I found most interesting is people require clarity, and clarity is clarity of vision, mission, as well as just clarity of what are the most important things to do every day. So yes, when I started as CEO, I think my very first note that I sent to the AMD team was, our focus on these 3 things: products, customers, and simplifying our lives. Believe it or not, the hardest of that has been simplifying our lives.
Yes.
So we've got pretty good products. We've got great customer relationships, but simplicity for we all live in this world of complexity. And how do you decide what do you do first, second, third, fourth, fifth? I would say even 6 years down the road, we're still working on simplifying our lives. But I think in an industry as dynamic as we are in, and Art, you and I both know this, we're in incredibly dynamic place. I think being able to call where you spend time and where you spend effort is so important.
Well, yeah, we are, sometimes I like to say, the heart of high tech, right, which is changing the world. And so it is extremely complex. At the same time, it's sort of cool to think of you as that kid in New York having no clue that this would ever happen. But I wonder, your relationship maybe at that time already to the financial side, to money. At what age do you think that you could without having to ask your parents, spend, I don't know, $35, you know, a Sony Walkman or something like that. What age were you there?
Well, I have to say, you know, when I was a teenager, I had a paper route, so I was walking
You too?
around.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, I was collecting my $2.50 a week for you know, for the week's paper. So, you know, maybe that added up to $35.
Yeah.
Like.
And this is sort of you know, young teenager.
Yeah. You know, you get on your bicycle and you go and deliver the paper.
Oh yeah, I remember it well too. And boy, if you're late, they hate you. But so it's sort of interesting, $35, because you know, earlier this week you spent a fair bit of money. It was not $35, but it was more like $35 billion. And you know, most people don't know what a billion is. A billion is 1,000 million. So just for the record, you spend 35,000 millions. Is that right? You must really have wanted that Sony Walkman.
Well, I got something much better than that Sony Walkman. Actually, we are you know, thrilled, absolutely thrilled at the acquisition of Xilinx. And you know, for those in the Valley, they know Xilinx is one of the premier franchises out there. Just incredibly good company, incredibly great people, and you know, it's exciting. I mean, it's exciting. You know, the thing about you know, semiconductors, as we all know, Art, is it's not a sport for the faint at heart. It is really about how do we put together you know, very, very talented teams to go after the right markets in the right places. So yeah, I'm very excited about our announcement earlier this week to acquire Xilinx, and I think it's going to make the combination really a very, very strong force, you know, defining the industry over the next, you know, 5 to 10 years.
So it strikes me you're doing that while you know, work from home COVID. Is this sort of a case of Zoom dating here? Is that how this came about?
Well, I have to say, I've known Victor Peng, the CEO of Xilinx, for many, many years. So I think we knew each other before we had to do Zoom dating. That being the case, we did spend quite a bit of time on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or, you know, Cisco WebEx, the favorite platform of the day.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, and you know, it is about trust, and it is about you know, culture and ensuring that our leadership teams you know, frankly, had trust in each other. But yeah, very exciting time, and yes, it did happen during this very unusual time, you know, for us in the industry.
Yeah, and you know, Xilinx is an outstanding company, and Victor is certainly an outstanding guy in my book. But you know, it still begs the question. Okay, I'm not sure exactly the numbers, but I assume that this adds sort of about 50% of people to AMD, and that begs not only the question of, you know, how do you do a cultural integration via WebEx, so to speak, and as a matter of fact, even without this acquisition, how do you hold the culture together and we just heard in the previous segment, you know, this COVID thing is far from done, right?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Art. I think we have to, you know, even within our own companies, we have about 13,000 people at AMD. We've been mostly work from home for, you know, our US and European colleagues. You know, Asia is a little bit further along, and it's taken work, as you and I have discussed. It's taken work to really, you know, the productivity of the teams is actually really good. It's just you know, keeping that spirit and you know, ensuring that we continue you know, to have that cohesiveness of culture. I will say the teams are remarkably resilient, and yeah, that's been a character as we've talked across the board. And you know, similarly, I think as we embark on this acquisition and integration of the Xilinx team, we are adding another 5,000 people, and it will require, you know, again, that communication, that trust, and that resilience, and just understanding this is the long-term goal. And you know, short-term, unfortunately, we can't see each other in person. But I have to say, for the record, I did yesterday 4 communications meetings, so 2 for AMD and 2 for Xilinx. So it was a busy day yesterday.
Yeah, the 4 is the start for another 400 because it's going to take a while to make that happen. But, you know, I think you have the positive backdrop that the company obviously is doing well and that this opens up a horizon of exciting things. And so that brings us a little bit to sort of, you know, your sense of enthusiasm for technology. If you look at the next 5 to 10 years, and I'm not looking for specific AMD things, but what do you think that high tech can accomplish that's meaningful to the entire audience here?
Well, I think, Art, you know, back to, I mean, if you just take a look at, you know, these last 6 or 9 months, I think technology is always an important, and especially for all of us in Silicon Valley, we've always recognized the importance of technology, but the importance has gone up like, you know, a factor of 10, right? If you think about everything that we're doing, it's incredibly dependent on having you know, the right technology to communicate, to collaborate, to work, to school, you know, to frankly, you know, solve many of these, you know, all of the medical research that's going on. And I think that's just going to continue. That's just going to continue. So if you look at the next 5 to 10 years, you know, it really is about how much more technology can do, you know, to make our lives better, to make our lives, you know, sort of more comfortable, to help us solve some of the larger, you know, issues out there, whether you're talking about, you know, medical research, or you're talking about climate change, or you're talking about, you know, your next big business problem. So that's the world that we live in. And we have the opportunity, all of us in the industry, to do our piece of that. And you know, that's, I think, what makes this industry so exciting for us.
Yeah, so I think de facto you're talking about massive data and artificial intelligence, right? That brings about all these potential big changes. And you know, you mentioned the impact on many areas, including you know, climate change. And so you know, yesterday I just clicked for kicks on your website, and I didn't know that AMD was actually a company that sells fans. There's these big machines and there's big fans, and maybe somewhere there's a chip behind it. Forget the product, radiator or Radeon or something like. Are you guys, you know, heating up the atmosphere with all this computation, and how does that link to global warming?
I will tell you what we're doing is we're putting incredibly powerful chips in people's hands. So this week we had a very exciting announcement. Actually, we launched our next generation, you know, Radeon graphics cards. So if any of you on the line, you know, love to game, you know, we would like to believe that whether you're a PC builder or you're a game console lover or anything having to do with gaming.
I need to pull you back from the advertisement here, because I was heading towards the global warming here with you, right? Which is, and actually,
no advertising, just fact. Just fact, we are a gaming company and it's a great time for gaming right now. So that particular fan was part of a several 100-watt chip that can run the best AAA games out there.
But my question underneath is actually a very profound one that I'm personally struggling with as well, which is we understand that AI, the big data, can change so many things, including games and so on. We also understand that ideally we'd like to get 1,000 times more computation. That computation does consume energy. And so you can see that you can advocate that this new technology will help change the world for better. But we're also sitting in a field where most of what we do is limited by the amount of power that we can use in computation. And I'm sort of wondering which, you know, you're CEO not only of a successful company, but also now a role model that has to speak out on the corporate social responsibility and so on. How do you deal with that specific balancing question? Where do you see that go? What can we do?
Well, I think the key is we all have to do our part, and you know, our part in that is building, you know, technology capability that is as power efficient as possible, and you know, that's one of the key things, as you said, because you know, these days the performance of chips is actually not the hardest piece. It's how do we get the power out, and how do we, you know, put as many of them together as possible. But it is something that we have to look at every level of optimization in the value chain, and that's working with our customers, partners, working with folks like yourself in terms of getting the tools able to even figure out how to optimize. So that is one of the key mantras of these days is really how do we optimize for power across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is going to be one of the single biggest limiters to both what we can do and how we do it. But that broadens the whole theme to, in your role, as said, a spokesperson, visibly so, for many things. And I wonder, is there a moment in your life where actually the notion of social consciousness came into being? It can be as a very young kid. It can be solely as an adolescent, or it can be now suddenly people ask you questions because they consider you smart and knowledgeable. And
yeah, for sure. I think we all have our personal thoughts, and I am from an immigrant family, so we've had as part of growing up, you also have some of these experiences. I think today, as a CEO, as a member of the community, I think our role in speaking up, both within our companies, as well as within the community, to try to make the world, sort of more sensitive and taking some significant actions to try to ensure that it becomes better is a large part of our job, and one of the things that again has made 2020 a different year than others in the past.
I'm unfortunately getting this sign of time's up, and it's very unfortunate because I love this discussion. And so in closing, surprisingly, you have in the last 2.5 years gotten 18 awards and big recognitions, and completely well-deserved. At the same time, with that comes sort of this responsibility. Well, she clearly knows the answers to all questions. And so a slight assignment. Can you have this team here, SVLG, where the L stands for leadership, and it's many executives at very different levels, small companies, very large companies. Any one tip that everybody can walk away with today and say, wow, yeah, she's right about it. I could do a little bit more of this or that. Any tip you want to leave us with?
Well, the best tip that I got, again, earlier in my career was, and it sounds like a cliche, but I'll put it out there. It's run towards problems. And having really smart people running towards problems, it's good for your career. It's good for your learning. It's good for the company or the business that you're part of. But that's really something that I've always kept in my forefront, because you're going to be busy no matter what you do, but you might as well solve something that is truly important to your organization or to your community, because it's extremely rewarding when you're done.
I love that lesson, and I will take it to heart today, because engagement is the start to being meaningful and adding purpose. And in your CSR statement, you have people, planet, and purpose. And what you just said is a great example for exactly that. So to the audience, you have seen her. She is even better than the reality that has been depicted. And, we find in Lisa a person who is just intellectually fabulously capable, executes very well, but most importantly to me is trustworthy and inspirational. And, it reminds me a little bit of the 90s where, all you had to do is buy some basketball shoes and you could be like Mike. Well, in high tech, we don't need to buy the shoes. We can just try to be like Lisa. Lisa, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you so much, Art. Thank you. It's great to have been here.